Omanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, what do we know of Madhavendra Puri? Today is, on this day, we commemorate the disappearance day from this world of Srila Madhavendra Puri. What do we know of this person? That's a question to the esteemed audience this lovely morning in Köln. Köln? How do you say? Köln. 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 Or the English butchering of it, Cologne. Do you know anything of Madhavendra Puri? Oh, you're from Zurich, or at least that's where I saw you last time. Or actually from Romania by birth, or something. Yeah.
He was a spiritual master of Chaitanya.
Ah, okay. So he was the guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. What else do we know? Yes.
About the also was his disciple Nityananda.
Okay.
Really say actually what is also as his disciple.
Very well. Yeah. Srila Advaitacharya was known as his follower. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I'm not wrong. He's a pattern in the spiritual world, the tree.
Oh, that beats me. I that kind of info, I'm the first one to forget. So you might be right. I don't know. What else do we know? Yes.
This is nice Lila when he was in the Govinda Kund near Govardhan. He was fasting, and then Krishna himself came to give him some milk and some ghee.
Yes, that's also true. That's also mentioned in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Very well.
He has also inaugurated worship in Vrindavan.
He has, sorry.
He also inaugurated worship.
Oh, inaugurate.
Actually, he's made some rules and regulations for them.
I didn't understand.
He established in Govardhan his temple.
Oh, yeah.
Temple,
yes.
And inaugurate worship for the deities.
Yes. Gopal.
He's learned them actually.
He's
learned them for the
learned.
I mean actually he's made them for the first inaugurate rules and regulation for the worship in Vrindavan exactly because it was some was break, some line of the worship, it was break, and he inaugurated all the standards of the worship.
That I don't know. That's a first to me. No. Yeah. Thank you. Well, what else do we know or don't know? Okay. Yeah. Do you, has anyone of you read perhaps Chaitanya Charitamrita? 1, 2, 3, 4. You also have, yeah. Okay, 5, yeah. Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong, but wasn't he the first one who was also preaching Madhurya Rasa, or was it someone else?
Very important thing. Madhavendra Puri is described as the seed of what we know nowadays, we could say as ISKCON, but Gaudiya Vaishnavism, or in academic circles also known as Chaitanya Vaishnavism. Yeah. And yeah, we'll get to it. What else do we know? That's actually maybe the most, the thing that stands out the most historically speaking, also theologically speaking, about Madhavendra Puri. Okay. Anything else comes to mind? Yes.
Three or four. Lord Shiva, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Madhavendra Puri. No, it's mostly, I'll say, Mrs. Madhuri Rasa, I mean, she's very on the 3 or 4, I don't remember exactly. Very no, real, I'll say.
Say in German, maybe something.
No, it's say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu itself say actually to Ramananda Roy, if I don't mistake actually, but only 3 know about, not even Lord Shiva, he, Ramananda Roy and Madhavendra Puri. We know 3 about Madhurya Bharatiya Rasa.
Aha, okay.
Higher I'll say education, you know.
Yeah.
Devotional service.
That's very much along the line of what Prabhu said, goes in the same venue. There's also an interesting thing described in the life of Madhavendra Puri is his passing away from this world. And as he was passing away from this world, he was lamenting. This was a very interesting thing about Srila Madhavendra Puri. Shri Shri Vijay Goranga Dayal Nitai Ki Jai. At the end of his life, he was lamenting. And I don't know if you remember this incident, but one of his disciples came and was very disappointed that his guru was lamenting. Do you know what lamentation is? To lament. Yeah, what's a Russian word for lamentation? No, it's not doubting. Lamentation. Not even complaining. What's the Russian word?
Russian, I don't know.
Oh.
English.
Sakrushalsa.
Lamentation means sakrushalsa.
Крушение means when the ship is broken, there is a крушение.
Крушение. Русское слово сокрушался не имеет значения крушения.
I mean, сокрушался, it has to do with this thing.
Okay. To lament, what's a German word for lamentation? Okay, in German we have, we all agree on a German term. Okay, that was easy. Lament. As he was lamenting, his disciple felt that his guru was somehow or other at error. Like, you're a guru, I've been following you my whole life, learning from you, and yet at the end of your life, you're lamenting. I mean, aren't you supposed to be above lamentation? Even the Bhagavad Gita says that one who is Brahma Bhuta is prasanatma, na shochati, does not lament. Like literally says in the Bhagavad Gita. One who's self-realized does not lament, and yet you are lamenting. And Madhavendra Puri did not like this. I mean, he had him escorted out. This person was known by the name of Ramachandra Puri and became a great criticizer. Later on, during the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came with a specific purpose to criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is, this happens in Chaitanya Charitamrita several times, this kind of drastic contrast where you have devotees enjoying swimming in the ocean of prema, in the ocean of love, in the ocean of respect for each other and whatnot. And then you have utter contrast to it. A person who's also like a devotee and looks like a devotee, but not a devotee. As a matter of fact, he entered that presence to criticize. I mean, that's like, you have sweet rice and then someone comes and puts in few drops of acid. It's horrible. We have that with amoga. As the sweetest of things has just taken place. Devotees from Bengal came to, as they would come every year, to Jagannath Puri to be with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu around the festival of Ratha Yatra, and then upon the completion of which they would all return to Bengal, and then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was left there because he lived in Jagannath Puri, and he saw, this is now my opportunity to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He constructs a whole building just to feed prasadam to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he cooks this humongous amount of prasadam, like enough for 100 people. I mean, like you come and it's like huge piles of prasadam. Mahaprabhu says, "Oh, you're a pure devotee. Only a pure devotee can serve Krishna with that kind of enthusiasm." Says, "Now give me a little." No, everything's for you. But but Amoga couldn't see this. Amoga could only see that here's a sannyasi, and here's a huge amount of prasadam. You follow? Like, how can a sannyasi eat so much, for God's sake? And he criticizes Mahaprabhu for this. Sarvabhauma wanted to murder him. Ran after him with a stick, like literally wanted to murder him. It was, how do you get to be like that? Of course, later on, Amoga has a change of heart, and then things return to normal. But what's interesting, Mahaprabhu pointed out to Sarvabhauma that whatever Amoga said was true. That sannyasi is not supposed to eat so much. But that's only partial truth. There's way more to it. There's like this bhakti reality that if you're not a devotee, you don't understand. So similarly here with Madhavendra Puri, we have a very similar situation in abstract form. The details are different, but the abstraction of it is the same. You have a person who's exhibiting the pinnacle of Krishna consciousness, of transcendence. And then you have another person who looks like a devotee, follows all the formalities of devotional life, and yet he doesn't get it. He says, you're lamenting. Bhagavad Gita says you should not lament. And it's true. He didn't lie. It's true. And precisely this is where the problem lies, that reality is multi-leveled, it's complex. All these fundamentalists who try, people are mostly fundamentalists in the sense that they try to reduce the complexity of reality to a few sets, or maybe just one set of something they can have a grasp on. And so you have conservative fundamentalists, you have liberal fundamentalists. It's like people have a tendency to do this, but life is complex. Metaphysical reality is very, very complex. And towards the end of his life, Madhavendra Puri was exhibiting what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to taste. Like, what did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu come to taste? Do you remember what is stated? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to experience something, taste it. He came to experience. Yeah.
A couple of things to mention, but one is
Yes.
taste what devotees
Okay, yeah.
Specifically, Shrimati Radharani.
Specifically Srimati Radharani. Like he wanted to know, experience, understand what is the experience of Srimati Radha when inner connection to Krishna. And that's what Madhavendra Puri was exhibiting, and yet this person criticized him for it. It's like, dude, you're not transcendental enough. Yeah, very interesting. I'll read to you a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita and a very short purport Prabhupada wrote to it. The verse says, all glories to Sri Madhavendra Puri, the storehouse of all devotional service unto Krishna. He is a desire tree of devotional service. Someone said about Kalpataru. Did you say that? So it's stated here. But I don't think, I think it's, he is described as a desire tree here figuratively, abstractly, not concretely. He is a desire tree of devotional service, and it is in him that the seed of devotional service first fructified. Prabhupada wrote the following short purport to this. Sri Madhavendra Puri, also known as Sri Madhava Puri, we had one brahmachari who was given that name, Madhava Puri. Sri Madhavendra Puri belonged to the disciplic succession from Madhvacharya and was a greatly celebrated sannyasi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the second disciplic descendant from Sri Madhavendra Puri. The process of worship in the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya was full of ritualistic ceremonies, with hardly a sign of love of Godhead. Sri Madhavendra Puri was the first person in the disciplic succession to exhibit the symptoms of love of Godhead, and the first to write a poem beginning with the words Ai Dina Dayardanatha, which devotees typically butcher, Dina Dayadra. There's a Mataji with that. Everyone calls it Dina Dayadra. No, it's Dina Dayarda. Daya Arda. Daya Arda means, Daya means mercy, kindness. Arda means moistened. You know, moist, liquid. Moistened means, permeated by liquid. Made soft. And first to write a poem beginning with the words Ai Dina Dayardanatha, quote, O supremely merciful personality of Godhead, end quote. In that poem is the seed of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cultivation of love of Godhead. So some things that Srila Prabhupada said here, he said with such words that it seems to me we could easily get a wrong picture. Like, for example, Prabhupada says that he was the first one to exhibit love of God. Does that mean that no acharya in our sampradaya from the beginning of time ever exhibited love of God? No. Srila Prabhupada here is referring to a specific form of love of God and specific intimacy with love of God. And also, not that all of this was, as far as I can tell, is not that it has not been exhibited before, but in general, what was happening historically speaking, achronistically speaking, achronistically means when you put it on a timeline, historically, right? Then what you have before Madhavendra Puri is a lot of our own acharyas arguing a lot, very specifically with Advaita Vedanta teachers.
Do
you know what Advaita Vedanta is? Yeah, Advaita means no two, it's all one. That's the conclusion of the Vedas. And this is, we should not be too quick to do away with the importance of these activities or even that focus, because ontologically speaking, Vedas begin with the Upanishads. And what do Upanishads do? Upanishads discriminate between reality and illusion. Upanishads divide the reality into basic components. Upanishads ask the question, what is the nature of reality? In other words, if you don't understand this, everything that follows is just a hallucination. That's why for most devotees, Vrindavan Leela is just a hallucination. Sentimentalistic hallucination. And we see in the life and the person of our own Srila Prabhupada that wasn't a hallucination, because there was always foundation. Upanishadic foundation as to what is the nature of this reality. And so just the fact that everything has a beginning and an end, like if you take birth and you die, do you understand how that fact makes your life useless, pointless, valueless in the grand scheme of things? If you experience any value, it's just your hallucination, your emotional experience, which bears no impact on reality. And so therefore, there begins the existential question as to why do I exist, or why does anything exist? And this is very important. And this is where Advaita Vedanta, the tradition of Advaita Vedanta, interprets the Upanishadic teachings as what we would call as Mayavada, that everything is one, that there's nothing but Brahman and we don't exist. We're all just parts of Brahman, and Brahman is actually, we're not even parts of Brahman. There's no parts of Brahman. Brahman is just hallucinating and thinking in terms of multiplicity. But we don't exist. This is not happening right now. This is what Advaita Vedanta teaches, if you didn't know. This is the Shankara's teachings. And so arguing with Advaita Vedantists and establishing the basis for the nature of reality is of utmost importance. But this seems to have been prevalent, like a very dominant aspect of our acharyas before Madhavendra Puri. Like this Madhvacharya, so it's like a very intense argumentor. I just made that word up. I don't know even whether it exists. Argumentary, someone who argues. Like he philosophically, very powerfully, philosophically argued. And then we have Madhavendra Puri, a person who is, whose life is different. Like his life is primarily exhibiting not this fight for the basis of reality, but is exhibiting life based on this reality. And that's a life of love, which I don't know if you notice, but we all seek for it, which to me is a powerful indicator that our Madhavendra Puri, our Madhvacharya, our teachings like really have a meaning. Like they're really sensible for God's sake. And Advaita Vedanta is super sensible until the very end. Just that Prabhupada also said himself, like, we agree with Advaita Vedanta almost on everything, up until the very last bit at the end. And that's really where they make no sense. They just flip everything around and say nothing exists. Reality is illusion. Jagat Mithya Brahma Satyam, something like that. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. That's like Mahabharata is saying, you know. And they literally mean that. Like, this is all illusion. And this is just Brahman hallucinating Kala. Sorry, I can't remember everybody's names. This Brahman is currently not hallucinating good enough. So there we find Sri Madhavendra Puri, like living life of devotion. Devotion which is impossible from the Advaita Vedanta point of view, because there is no two. It's all one. And for devotion, there has to be object, subject, and activity. In other words, perceiver, perceived, and the action of perceiving. In terms of Krishna consciousness, that's Bhakti, Bhakta, Bhagavan, and Bhakti. And so, and we agree with Advaita Vedantists, this is all one. We're integral parts of Krishna. Like we are, we can't say we are Krishna because I'll get in trouble, but we are. And we're not. We're eternally separated bits of Krishna. And Prabhupada said this many times. And there's a lot of statements like this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which Mayavadis love, that speak of our unity, oneness with Krishna. And Vaishnavas don't disagree that Sarva Kalvidam Brahma, that everything is Brahman. Yes, we also say that. But we also say that with that Brahman, within that Brahman, there's distinction. There's eternal distinction. Like the sun and the sun rays. That's two things, but one thing also. The only difference is that the sun does not emanate from the sun rays. The sun rays emanates from the sun. And the sun rays depends for its existence on the sun. Like, very important. But Mayavadis, Advaita Vedantis, they would negate all of that. And so what we find with Madhavendra Puri is, it's not that love of God did not exist before, but it was never exhibited like, or practiced like we have in the example of Madhavendra Puri. And not only that, but a super intimate form of love. And Srila Prabhupada says that Madhavendra Puri first composed a verse. The composition of this verse is attributed to Madhavendra Puri historically. And it's stated that it is believed, because unfortunately we don't have a whole lot of information on the personal life of Madhavendra Puri, but we have a lot of information about his teachings, about certain things about him, not a whole lot. Not like nowadays we have about Prabhupada, everything recorded, born that time, died that time, did this, that, married, divorced, had kids, suffered pneumonia and whatnot, like all of the details. We don't have that about Madhavendra Puri, but we still have some details like the finding of the Gopal deity at Govardhan, establishing puja, celebrated with Anna Kuta, if you remember. Anna means the mountain of food. That's how we worship Gopal. There's something about prasadam and Vaishnavas, I guess. Keeps repeating. Personally serve that deity, train pujaris how to serve the deity. I mean, went to South India, wherever he went, I can't remember, somewhere far, to get sandalwood for the deity. Because in the dream, I think if I remember correctly, deity told him that I'm hot. and do you know how to get sandalwood paste? Like you take sandalwood. It's a very hard wood, like hardwood floor, like super hard. And then you put it on a stone. You put a drop of water, or like rose water or something fragrant, and then you grind the thing until you get. Do you know how? I mean, they were grinding this for I don't know how long until they covered the whole deity in paste. And even nowadays in ISKCON, we sometimes do this. We worship the deity by smearing the deity with sandalwood paste. There's more twist to that story because at the end, but anyhow, not to get sidetracked. So what we do know about Madhavendra Puri, that he was reciting this verse, Ai Dina Dayar Danata He, Mathura Nata Kadava Lokyase, Hridayam Tvad Aloka Kataram, Daita Brahmyati Kim Karamyaham. Relatively simple Sanskritam. I understand most of it. One word I don't understand. Kataram, that's the one the rest I understand. So never before did we see exhibited, practiced, and lived this kind of intimacy with God. But not only intimacy, but separation from God. Because Madhavendra Puri lamented even throughout his life, and then especially towards the end of his life, his separation from Krishna. And this is in Gaudiya Vaishnavism described as the pinnacle of religious experience. And if you remember the descriptions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like he would undergo such physical transformations that devotees would cry. They'd be devastated upon seeing what these devastating feelings in Mahaprabhu would do to his physical body. I shouldn't say that about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But it's described how blood would pour out of the pores on his skin. Then the joints, you know what joints are. The joints on his body would separate, and only skin would be connecting two parts, and it'd be like, several inches space in between. Devotees didn't know what to do with Mahaprabhu, especially towards the end of his life, of his manifested pastimes. Did any one of you perhaps visit Gambhira in Jagannath Puri? You have. Like that's where they would, some or other Mahaprabhu would survive the day. But nights were horrible. Because his heart longed for Krishna. Because he was living the bhakti of Srimati Radha. Separation from Krishna, like burning. And so at night they would lock him in this small room because he'd be out of his mind, so to speak. And he would just vanish into the ocean, find him behind the Jagannath temple, laying somewhere in a devastated, apparently, state of actually super ecstatic. Hard to understand. So they locked him in this room, and then he'd be chanting Krishna's name, calling out to Krishna, and leaning his face against the wall and walking along the wall, bruising his face, completely oblivious to the pain. Like this is Gambira. And this is what Madhavendra Puri exhibited. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a disciple of Srila Ishwara Puri, technically speaking, who was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Ishwara Puri, as opposed to Ramachandra Puri, who criticized his guru for lamenting, was not criticizing his guru at deathbed, but was actually humbly serving him. And he ended up in a very different position from Ramachandra Puri, became the guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is what Madhavendra Puri was exhibiting. And yet this foolish disciple couldn't understand. It's okay to not understand, but man, if you don't have a whole lot of information about a thing, don't judge. You know, there is a saying, thinking is hard, so I judge. Do you understand this? Yeah. That's exactly what Ramachandra Puri did. That's exactly what Srila Ishwara Puri did not do. But rather served his guru. So I'll try to translate this verse to you. I mean, there is a translation. The thing is, with Sanskritam, it's such a graphic language. And words typically are packed with meaning. Very difficult to translate them into English. Especially, it is very difficult to translate them succinctly. Because Sanskrit words are succinct. They're, succinct like short. They're short. And then in order to translate them into English, you have to write, almost a book for each of the words. So you have to translate all of that. But if you learn these terms in Sanskrit, it's like a real punch, when you read it. Like, it really hits your heart. All of that pregnant with import shlokas. One short shloka, but heavy. Ai is it's a form of lamentation, a call. Dina means, I think you all know this word, right? Dina. We often use it. We have a lot of devotees with that name. Dina Bandhu, Dina Dayal. Yeah, Dina means like fallen, miserable, low, downtrodden. That's Dina. How do you then translate that into English? I don't know. Or German. You pick a word, you pick a word and it means only a little bit of the word Dina. Daya means mercy. Like Daya Sindhu, you might have heard some devotees have this name. So what we have is Dina, Daya. So Dina, Daya. So what do we get? Some mercy towards the Dina, or the fallen, or the downtrodden, small, weak. Dina Daya. Ardra means moist or soaked. Like if you, in the Bhagavatam says, in the Bhagavatam there's a statement, I think in the 5th canto, that water has an interesting property. When things come in contact with it, tend to become soft. So by soaking things become soft. So when something is moistened, becomes soft. And so what we have here is Ai Dina Daya Arda. Daya Arda, like moistened, softened, flooded with daya, with mercy, kindness, love, compassion. Nata. Nata is also hardly ever understood word in the modern world. Nata means master, Lord. God forbid I say that husband is also. We're in Germany. Cut the. Cut the video, man. But it's often misunderstood. Like, so, Nata is the caregiver, is the protector, is someone who loves, someone who gives shelter, someone who cares, someone you're happy to depend upon, or also someone who you do depend upon. This is all Nata. So this is the first line. Like, he's calling out to Nata, the Lord of his heart, which is Krishna. He's calling out to the Lord, without whom I couldn't exist, because he's a Nata. Like, this is the person that maintains my existence. I depend upon this person. And what kind of a person is this? Whose heart is moistened, softened with the kindness, love, mercy for the low. Mathura Nata. Oh, this is now, man. The Lord of Mathura. Anyhow, this is too rasika now. But you have to know what is Mathura in order to understand. Why is he thinking of the Lord of Mathura? Mathura Nata. Kadava Lokshyase. When? Avalokshase. Will I see? In other words, he's separated. He's not there. He's not with Krishna. He's when will I see him? When will I see you? He's not talking to clouds. He's talking directly to Krishna, even though Krishna is not there. By the way, I don't know if you remember, but Prabhupada told us how to chant Hare Krishna. Jai Gaurnitai. Prabhupada told us how to chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said that we should call out to Krishna. You know what it means to call out? It's like, Kala has my jacket. And I'm like, Kala, hey, my jacket. You're calling out to someone. Prabhupada says that chanting Hare Krishna is like this. It's calling out. And if you ever suffer from the problem of having difficulty to focus while chanting Hare Krishna, that's probably because you're not calling out to Krishna. So Prabhupada says you call out to Krishna like a baby's calling out for the shelter of the embrace of its mother. This is very much along the line of this. Nata, you're like, what can I do without you? Like, I depend upon you. We've never seen such intimacy of a devotee with God exhibited constantly like that up until Madhavendra Puri. When will I see you? Means he's not seeing him. In other words, there's a pain of separation. This whole song is a painful song. The goal of life is to suffer. In separation from Krishna. A 16 rounds, so what a suffering. That's exactly, that's almost like that contradiction, that contrast we see often in Chaitanya Charitamrita, between devotees and a criticizer. That's like that. Yeah. Like, all of this is packed in the Mahamantra. What Mahaprabhu gave is this process. But, very often, like, we're thinking, man, 16 rounds. Hridayam tvad aloka kataram. Kataram, now I can't remember. Something about kataram, something about doing. When will I see you in my heart? Kataram, I think. I wasn't smart enough to. I just copied the verse. I forgot. I didn't copy the translation. Sorry, I should have, I guess. Anyhow. And then the last line is Daita Brahmyati Kim Karomya. Brahmyati means to wander. Like, where will I go? What will I do? He feels lost. He is expressing a feeling of being lost. He's not lost. He's not lost at all. But that's a feeling of the separation from Krishna. That's what the gopis experience. We could say that the pinnacle of the Bhagavatam is when the gopis met Krishna at the night, on the full moon night of the Sharad season. This is the most perfect time on the bank of Yamuna. But then Krishna left. And the gopis went insane. In other words, if you thought that was the pinnacle of bhakti, gopis finally meeting Krishna, then when Krishna left their company, they went insane. The meditation on Krishna, the focus on Krishna intensified so much that the subject was merged into the object. And this is what happens when you intensely focused on something. If you want to understand how love of God works, take a hammer and smash your thumb. And then you will notice that you will have forgotten everything, the legs, the head, and you will completely merge into the thumb. Like, you will not exist, your hunger, your interest, your fears, everything will be gone. Only the thumb will exist. That's what happens when the meditation intensifies. The subject dissolves and becomes the object. Of course, only apparently the subject and the object continue to exist, but that is the phenomenon. That's the experience. That's the nature of experience. And therefore, in the Bhagavatam, we have gopis completely losing sense of themselves, and each behaving as if she was Krishna. If you remember this section of the 10th canto. So this is the pinnacle of meditation, not Mayavada stuff. Gopis were there, Krishna was there, but the gopis became, their meditation on Krishna so intensified, like this, they became Krishna. They didn't become, but there was no separation whatsoever, and yet it was induced due to separation, or induced by separation from Krishna. And so this is what Madhavendra Puri was exhibiting especially towards the end of his life. Where will I go? Like, what shall I do now? Where can I find you? And this is exactly what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was exhibiting throughout his, and this is ISKCON. But what's interesting, many years after Madhavendra Puri, we had Sahajiyas. I hope you all have never met one, but I hope you do know about this very common deviation. Very interesting term. Sahaja means natural, because saha means with, like with something or with someone. Like it has a similar meaning like yoga or Sanskritam or Sankirtana, that sam means together. With. Sahaja, ja means birth or origination. So sahaja, something born with. It's a Sanskrit word for natural. In other words, you were born like that. You were born with it. Like it's most natural to you. And so these sahajiyas, the reason, come in. It's all good. We're in a good mood this morning, so. So very appropriate name, sahajiya. In some sense, you could say it's a very interesting word, natural. But you find this element, sahajiya element, very often among devotees. I remember we used to have like, sometimes between 40 and 50 brahmacharis, and a lot of young men. And there were always some disgruntled ISKCON members who would come to these brahmacharis and tell them, why are you pretending? Just admit you want sex. Like, why are you abstaining? Like, just be natural, man. Like, be natural. Sahaja. Like, be natural. But that's exactly the difference between an animal and a civilized human being. That a civilized human being understands the difference between things you should be natural about and things you should not be natural about. That you have the ability to impose self-control. People who have no self-discipline are uncivilized. They're on the level of animals. But if you're Madhavendra Puri, you should naturally let your spiritual feelings fly, like free, like birds. Roam the sky of Krishna Prema. But if that's not what's in your heart, then man, you better be civilized. Because we do know what the whole Sahajiya movement was. It would always come to always the same thing. And this is men and women enjoying sense gratification. Like animals. In the name of Krishna consciousness. So again, we end up with this heavy contrast, two things which look alike, but they're actually so opposite. So that's why, I don't know about you, but I mean, and I'm not, I'm not one of those. I'm an anarchist. I don't like to follow. And so what I'm saying now is I'm not saying this because I'm a faithful Hare Krishna follower. Like I really do see that value in Srila Prabhupada, which I didn't see in numerous authors I was reading before. Yes, there was the height of love of God, the spiritual emotion, but there was also the Upanishadic base of what is this reality? What's the nature of this reality? What are the elements, blocks of this reality? And if you separate the two, you just become a smelly sahajiya. In psychology, long ago, people have noticed that religion is not always, but sometimes, is a form of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a loss of touch with the reality. That's schizophrenia. And it's typically induced by some painful incident, typically. And this person just, in order to cope with living, cuts him or herself from that reality and then lives in an imaginary world. And so that person is dysfunctional. That's schizophrenia. And without a base that Srila Prabhupada keeps repeating, like on Radhashtami, Prabhupada gives a lecture on Dehinosmin Yata Dehe, you are not the body. And then these Vrindavan Sahajiyas and his godbrothers call him basic. Man, horrible. Like, how do you manage to say something so stupid? Even now we see like many devotees departing away from Prabhupada and just skipping this base and off to Vrindavan pastimes. Like Prabhupada was very conservative when it came to even talking about it, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was. Because then you just get this sahajiya. It looks the same, but it's actually opposite of what it should be, or what the reality is. And so what we have now, post Madhavendra Puri, is that we have this whole like really good package that makes sense. It's very practical. It's down to earth and it's up in the sky. Very solid. Explains things such as the nature of reality, gives life meaning, puts things in perspective, things that are most important to us, like love. Like, what is that love? Everyone talks about it, but like, what? And then with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came also Mahaprabhu's followers who did what Mahaprabhu wanted them to do. And one of them was Srila Rupa Goswami, who we could say took this verse of Madhavendra Puri and expanded it, like fluffed it out. And that's, what do we get? We get Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the summary of which is known as Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada wrote a summary study of. But if you want to read Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhanu Maharaj translated it some 15, 20 years ago, 10, 15, I don't know, time flies, into English. And everything, like word for word, complete translations with commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and I forget some other Vaishnavas also. So what we have is truly valuable. It's good. It's practical. And more we ourselves understand it, more we can communicate its value to the world, which is our mission. Om Tat Sat. I don't know what the time is. I hope I didn't go 8:40. Okay. Any questions or comments, perhaps? Yes.
If I may.
You may. This is a free country. We're not in Iran.
Krishna goes to the forest. He's as if he's leaving the bodies, they are insane, getting insane. But he says, "But not worry, I take your hearts with me." So the question is, separation comes from him or from us? Or it's
Separation comes from Krishna. What did you say after that?
because he goes to the forest, the gopis are suffering. Don't worry, yes, it's my language, in my language.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't worry. And he takes their hearts with him. So that's why the question is, separation comes from him or from us, or that is just process that
No,
can't be broken.
it's a complex situation. There's all kinds of things going on there. The result of which is vipralamba. And our acharyas always add seva, service in separation, not just separation. Yeah, I mean, if you want everything, I mean, if you feel the need to reduce things, yeah, we could always say Krishna. Or you can just say Om. But if you want to unpack it, then there's a lot of detail there. where does it come from? Krishna. Everything comes, aham sarvasya prabhava, everything comes from Krishna. It's like in court when a husband and wife want to separate. And then you ask, like, who's the reason, he or she? But you go into it and you'll find, billion things, like, one did this, then the other one did that, and it becomes super complex. So also here, the spiritual emotion is not a product of one thing. I mean, yeah, it's product of Brahman, if you want to say, but that's like very unsavory thing to say. Srila Rupa Goswami studied this emotion through an existing structure of study of emotion in Indian tradition in drama. And it took that structure and just threw out all the content and pour in the Krishna content. So that's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's a study of the love of God through the structure of the study of emotion in Vedic tradition of drama. He didn't make that up. He just took the existing structure. Are you okay with that answer?
I'm sorry for the question.
No, why? Why would you be sorry?
Because it's a very high level for me to ask this question.
It is what?
Too high for me.
Too high.
So it is.
Well, it's
Those two think we should think this way.
no, it's over my head too. Trust me. But it's just like honey, to use the example Prabhupada gave, which he got from his own gurus, Saraswati Thakur. If you have a jar of honey, like, yeah, sure, in order to understand what a honey is, you should taste it. But even if you don't taste it, you can understand something about it, the color, the viscosity, the texture, medicinal properties, effects of overeating. So yeah, we can understand something. And it's not that, look, I mean, we've been all here for a while, trying to practice Krishna consciousness. It's not that we don't understand anything, we understand something. We have some experience, but it's an ocean, it's bottomless. It's vast. Vast means expansive. And yeah, I don't go around lamenting like Madhavendra Puri, But we can get a glimpse here and there of something like that. So it's okay to talk about it. I mean, Prabhupada wrote Krishna book. And he told us to mass distribute it. To people who know nothing about it. So, there's an interesting verse in the in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which Prabhupada quotes in the in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and when commenting on it, Prabhupada says two contradictory things. Says, like, we should never read this. This is for liberated people. And he gives the example of a person who has a goat by the name of Radha. And now he goes to the assembly of Vaishnavas and hear Vaishnavas speak. And then as they speak of Radha, he cries. But he's thinking of his goat. So Prabhupada says that's why we should not imitate, that's why we should not hear this subject matter. But then later on he says that precisely we should hear this. As a matter of fact, in the introduction to Krishna book, Prabhupada writes that, Prabhupada says, who is this Radha and who is Krishna? And then he goes on to explain. And then he says, this will be interesting reading matter even for lusty people. Because, there is attraction between a male and female. So obviously, what you have there is like two apparently contradictory statements, but they're not contradictory, they're only paradoxical. They only seem to be contradictory. So yeah, anyone can read this, but in order to make a spiritual progress, then there's a science to it. In other words, yeah, you could hear it and make no spiritual progress, maybe even regress, like that. So yeah, we should not and we should hear. So discuss and ask questions, but with a particular quality, like that. So I think we're within parameters of appropriate at the moment. So no need to be sorry. Yes.
I have two questions. First question is, I've heard that the Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentary of
Vedanta Sutra.
And I know that there have been different commentaries of the Bhagavad Gita from different Vaishnavas. And Srimad Bhagavatam also, and the Srimad Bhagavatam we have from Srila Prabhupada. It's his own commentary, or he summarized all the commentaries?
Prabhupada's commentaries are, so when Prabhupada was commenting on the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada had with him commentaries of other acharyas, and he would always reference those, like that. And even if apparently did not comment, even when he apparently was not distilling the comments of the previous acharyas, he actually was. Just in his own words, like that.
My second question is, in the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna says, I don't know which verse, but he says like, when someone who has achieved this, he sees me everywhere and sees everything in me. Mm-hmm. So I think this in the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna is just saying about Sambhoga, like the union aspect, right?
Yeah. Bhagavad Gita is it's an Upanishad. Bhagavad Gita is an Upanishad by its style, language, and message. Even though it's not found in the Vedic literature, but in the auxiliary Vedic literature, Mahabharata. So that's why, in the strictest sense, it's not an Upanishad. But by its style, by its message, by its discussions, it's very much an Upanishadic text. And therefore, throughout history, Bhagavad Gita has always been known, Prabhupada writes that in the introduction, known as Gita Upanishad. And what's interesting, this Gita Upanishad is by far, historically speaking, the most influential Upanishad. Not only the most influential Upanishad, but the most influential Vedic, or any literature coming from Vedic tradition. By far. Because nothing like Bhagavad Gita succinctly puts everything, synchronizes everything. And if you know Nyaya or logic, like the best argument is the one that synchronizes most arguments. So that's exactly what Bhagavad Gita does. Kriyananda Maharaj calls Bhagavad Gita a synthetic text. Not that it's plastic, but because it does the synthesis. It synthesizes Vedic concepts, Upanishadic teachings, and so on. So that's why Bhagavad Gita is basic, and it's only in the most elementary way is referencing prema, in the most basic way. And so that's why Bhagavad Gita is huge on equality, sameness, oneness, which are the most basic concepts of the nature of reality. In Western traditions, that's known as essentialism, like this eternal essence of things. We call that Brahman.
Okay, so like this lamentation thing and like this lamentation thing which is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So it's most probably like on the Brahman.
Yeah. In other words, one who's Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana Shochatina Kankshati Sama Sarveshu Bhutis, sees all beings equally. So that's just an introduction. The spiritual feeling is after that. That's why spiritual feeling that laments and so on, if it's not based upon the foundation of Upanishads like the Bhagavad Gita, it's precisely what Bhagavad Gita says you should not have. And that's why Sahajiyas and so on, they look like devotees, but no, really far. And there's plenty of it in ISKCON, just sentimentalism. Okay, last thing, and then, because we're losing audience, you see, everyone's they vote with their feet, as they say in America.
What about when we meditate on Om? We can also see Krishna if we meditate on Om.
Yeah, because everything is in Om. Everything expands from Om. Om is like bija, a seed. And in the seed, the whole tree is packed in it. And if you don't see the tree, you don't understand the value of that seed. So similarly, if you don't see the complexity in the simplicity of Om, you don't know what Om is. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada writes a little bit about Om, referring to Vaishnava Acharya's commentaries on what you find in Om, A-U-M. Like you have the source, you have the energies, and then you have the relationship between the source and energies, M, A-U-M. It's not A, it's it's not U, but it's, when it goes up here, and then when you close the mouth, it becomes that M. And that first it vibrates here, but then you let it go up. It says it takes you to Krishna. That's how Om is chanted. You can try. And so Prabhupada says that there's Krishna, devotee, and devotional service. So it's energetic energies and the relationship between the two. Sambandha abhideya prayojana. Okay, we gotta leave something for tomorrow. All right, thank you. Jai, Hare Krishna. So you probably put this up on the internet.